and welcome. I'm Andy Richmond and thank you for joining us for this preview that is brought to you by NFL Insight as we take a look at the San Francisco 49ers visit to the Jacksonville Jaguars. Well, I say visit as this is officially a Jacksonville home game, but of course it will actually be played in London as the second game in the international series this year. We'll cover a look at the betting markets, reflect on previous games between the two teams, how they performed this season, and also take a look at some of the important tactical elements within the game before we round out the preview with a small sample of our live match trading statistics, which form the basis of a lot of our trading decisions and strategies on Sunday night when we trade the games live. Let's take a look at the prices on the game first that are offered by the bookmakers and how they compare with our NFL Insight tissue price, which we have available for every game that we trade. The match odds are pretty unappealing this week with the 49ers a long odds-on chance, and I would imagine that most of the action will be done on the handicap line this week, where the bookmakers have set a plus 17 mark on Jacksonville. Another large handicap line for them to sustain and take into the game. It should be remembered they did reward their handicap backers at least when overcoming what was the largest ever handicap line in the NFL when they played the Broncos back in week 6. They were awarded a start, of course, of about 28.5 points on that occasion and kept well within that line and rewarded their backers. These prices that you see on the chart before you are produced by profiling hundreds of similar games. As we calculate the numbers, the games are of similar structure and strength, and that gives us a good marker in the market. In this game, we'd expect the first points to come from a 49ers touchdown around 49% of the time. That would equate to just around an even money chance, and that gives you a chance, those percentages give you a chance to compare the prices with what's on offer in the market. In fact, looking at the prices at the market, I can't find that even money anywhere. 4 to 6 is the best that I can find. So you could say that the bookmakers are offering you a little under what we consider to be the true price in our match statistics market. And of course, we have all of those other prices available on the charts there in front of you, and you can see compare what's available in the marketplace with those prices. All of these prices are available via our trading sheets, so you compare a real price based on hundreds of similar games with what you're being offered in the marketplace. In effect, you've got your own tissue in your own hands, and they could prove incredibly useful if you're betting or trading on the game. Plus, we have now added sheets which give you an accurate guide to what sort of prices you'd be expecting given the time or score in the game for either side. So we've got in effect a sliding tissue, if you like. We'll take a look at the betting on the game. You can see these are the matchbook prices. Matchbook are, guarantee you give it a whirl on there because they're pretty well clued up on the NFL these days. There's some good liquidity in the market as well, and on the exchange are about a 1.08 San Francisco and 13 for the Jacksonville Jaguars to win. So again, heavy odds on for the 49ers, but you would expect that playing the Jaguars, of course, are 0-7 this year. We'll move on. We'll take a look at the handicap line. There's those 17 points, and it has just forced the Jaguars. People are thinking with the 17 points, the Jags are not a bad bet with those 17 points. In fact, it's made them favourites. That may even just change a little bit. San Francisco having to overcome a 17-point deficit to win your bet, and you'll probably get around 2.15 for your money and that at the moment if you think they can overcome that deficit, and they have been rolling in the points lately, as I'll show you in a minute. On the points line, they're set around 40.5. Games at Wembley, we've had some high scoring ones, but with the weather being as it is, a bit wet and rainy, that pitch can cut up there, and you've got to wonder what the Jags are going to contribute to the score. So you're probably looking at the 49ers probably scoring around 30 points, which they have done of recently, and the Jags contributing 10. I actually possibly think the value is a little bit on going over that line, probably maintained about even money. Let's just reflect now on what's happened so far this year and how when these teams have met. The teams have actually only ever met 3 times before. The Jags won the first 2 encounters. One was a 41-3 victory. That was back in 1999, I believe, and then a 10-9 victory. But the 49ers took the last game 20 points to 3. Vernon Davis and Frank Gore scoring TDs for San Francisco, with the Jags points coming from a Josh Scobie field goal. Of course, all those 3 players still playing for their teams, and Davis and Gore forming an integral part of the 49ers offense at the moment, and Josh Scobie is 9 for 9 with his field goals this year, so it might be worth having a look at those protagonists to score at Wembley at the weekend. So far this season, San Francisco, well, they're 5-2. They had a bit of an indifferent start to the season. Good win over Green Bay in week 1 before they lost their next 2, and now they've reeled off 4 consecutive wins. And I've said about that points market, they've scored 30 plus points in each of those victories, so they're certainly piling up the points at the moment. Well, the Jags, they're 0-7. Well, their only hope left for this year is to score a victory somewhere. They've shown flickers of encouragement this year, but more importantly, and again relating it back to that points line, they have only scored double-figure points in 3 games this year. Now, let's take a look at 5 factors for each team which may well influence their approach to the game. We'll take the 49ers first. Well, let's take a look at their quarterback, Colin Kaepernick. Throwing and running, question mark. The NBC analyst and Super Bowl winning head coach Tony Dungy called Kaepernick the winning ingredient last Sunday, which is something we've not been able to say about the 49ers quarterback since week 1 of the 2013 regular season. On the field, he's been very up and down following that opener, which included, of course, those 2 straight losses and the team's first dip below a .500 record in the Jim Harbaugh era. A lot of that was due to the play calling, and I'll touch on that in a minute, and the lack of offensive weapons, and I'll also touch on that as well. But Kaepernick has adjusted, and better yet, Harbaugh and his coaching team seem far more confident in their quarterback, not allowing him but enabling him to do things that make him such a unique player in his position. We saw that at the end of the last year with the read option and in the playoffs as well. So they've gone back to that, using the read option. They called several on Sunday, and those keepers by the quarterback eventually led to a 20-yard rushing touchdown by Kaepernick in the second quarter. And that read option, what it also does, it set up multiple scores for the team, including 2 rushing touchdowns by Frank Gore. It does put the opposing defence just on the back foot. He looks to be coming back to his season, or his best of last season, Colin Kaepernick, and that spells danger for the opposition. Now, what has happened with the 49ers, they've totally committed to running the ball after eye-opening losses to Seattle and Indianapolis, in which the team ran only 20 and 23 times. Since then, the 49ers have logged 40, 36, 38 and 41 rushing attempts, emerging with a 4-0 record and a plus 81 point differential. So you can see why I've titled that, Run the Damn Ball. From the heavyweights on the offensive line, to the scheme they're running, to the blocking ability of their tight ends, and a heavy bruiser of a fullback that they've got, the 49ers are 100% built to run the ball. Time and time again, they've demonstrated they can impose their will and control games. It's not sexy, this style, but it does work for them. Over the course of the game, running the ball down the opponent's throat starts to open up more and more of the playbook. One thing it does do, though, and I'll touch on this now, is, or where they need to open up, is receiving options. One thing that the 49ers need to do is find more receiving options. At the moment, all of their passing offense seems to be channeled through wide receiver Anquan Bolden and tight end Vernon Davis. Now, there's nothing wrong with that. They have been very, very good this year, the pair of them. And that's been a perpetual trend for San Francisco all this year. They've been connected to lots of trades for wideouts. They seem to have passed up on those. But it doesn't look as though they're making any effort for the 49ers to get any of what I should call their unknown wide receivers involved at all. In fact, offensive coordinator Greg Roman is just using those route runners to detract from where the ball seems to be actually going. It doesn't seem to be like the staff expect any of those unknown receivers to step up at this point. They seem to be relying on Bolden, Davis and Gore on the ground, and considering that to be a much, much better plan. They're almost what Harbaugh calls his trusted agents. Why should they go away from the game? They shouldn't, of course, but if any of that breaks down, it would not be nice to see them have more options on offense against teams like the Jags, etc. Then I think they might get away with it, but in time, this could be, could be costly to them. But the one thing they do have on their side is a relentless defence. Absolutely relentless, this defence has been. They've lost names like Alden Smith, Ian Williams, Chris Culliver, and at times Patrick Willis and Glenn Dorsey, and they've probably got a half healthy Ray McDonald. But it's a miracle this defence has remained at the top of the league. They've shown in leadership, a very good scheme, and attitude and the depth, which has made it, they can endure those losses. The 49ers are pressuring the quarterback, they're stopping the run, they're not getting called for excessive penalties, and they are forcing turnovers again. They're putting together a really, really complete performance, and it's those takeaways that have become very, very important. The 49ers have scored 61 points, 7 touchdowns and 4 field goals on their past 11 takeaways. So this aggressive approach by Vic Fangio's defences has been a big reason for the team's recent success, and it could spell a clear and ever-present danger for the Jaguars on Sunday. Now, 49ers offensive coordinator Greg Roman has had his share of critics this year, not to say, and some of that has been deserved. He had a pretty rocky start to the NFL season, and is playing a substantial role in some of what were stagnant performances by this offense. But he seems to have got in touch with the team's strengths. I've already touched on, getting that ball and running it on the ground in a ball control style of offense. So those power rushing and jumbo formations that they've been using, they've been prevalent on game day. And Colin Kaepernick hasn't been overwhelmed with passing attempts to what has been, a limited and wounded receiving core. And now they're getting Kaepernick more onto the game. So it's hats off to Roman. He's righted the ship. He's helping this team string together 4 straight wins through using his strengths. To the top playmakers, Vernon Davis, Frank Gore, Anquan Boldin, they're all now in full swing. So expect to see a heavy dose of those on Sunday, and you should also be looking at those players in the player markets. They could be looking at reinforcements in a few weeks and players back, but at the moment it's Boldin, Gore, Davis, Kaepernick. They are the key parts and the fulcrum of that 49ers offense. Let's flip things over and take a look at what the Jaguars need to do to even stay competitive in this game. Well, the first thing they need to do is keep mistakes and miscues out of their game. They're a side that is fairly limited in skill players, and as their 0-7 record shows, they've just become sloppy. Their last game against the Chargers, the offense was sloppy, the defense was just as bad. Executing the basics better would at least give them a chance. In the game. One of the things that they need to do is their run defense. The Jaguars entered Week 7, which was their game against San Diego, ranked dead last in the NFL in rushing yards allowed. They've given up 915 yards on the ground over 6 games for an average of 152 yards per game, more than 120 yards and 20 yards per game more than any other team. Now, although San Diego consistently put problems on, caused the Jags problems. They piled up 158 yards on the ground against the Jags, and it's even in their banged up, they had a really banged up offensive line that consistently blew Jacksonville's defense off the ball. If Jacksonville can't get better play from its defensive line, the opponents will continue to pick up huge chunks of yardage on the ground and move the chains at will. The Jaguars have personnel that's made it difficult to stop the run, but they also need to play better at the line of scrimmage. And this week they face Frank Gore, who will make the most of any weakness in the Jaguars' run defense, and he could be headed for a big day, as the 49ers have already pointed out, rediscovered how to run the ball again this year. A week after a respectable performance in Denver against the Broncos, the Jaguars' offensive line took a major step backward at home against the Chargers. San Diego sacked Chad Henne 6 times and was in his face all game. They were credited with 7 quarterback hits, 7 tackles for a loss and 5 passes defence, several of which were batted passes at the line of scrimmage. The Chargers held the Jags to a total of 78 yards rushing and were consistently beating the Jaguars' offensive line at the line of scrimmage. Against the 49ers, Jacksonville's line will need to play more like it did against Denver than it played against the Chargers, or Chad Henne might, I just say might, be getting more than he bargained for. In fact, he could be close to getting him killed. Justin Smith and company are much better than the Chargers' defensive line. The Jaguars need to get better along that offensive line fast. Otherwise, Chad Henne is going to see a lot of the North London turf at Wembley. Now, offence. They have actually some decent weapons. The first 2 games, wide receiver Justin Blackmon put up some ridiculous stats. 19 catches, 326 yards and a touchdown. But he was essentially the entire offence against Denver. They looked much better last week than when they started to get Cecil Shorts involved in that. And those 2 make a good wide receiver pairing. But they can't be the total offence, and And what the Jags need to do is try and rediscover a running game. At the moment, Maurice Jones-Drew, who has been a very good running back, looks the least explosive of the running back options that they have. And they really do need to get that offense going, balanced as well. Shorts, Blackmon, if you can get the ball to them, they will make things happen. But they need to get a ground game going first via Jones-Drew or one of their other options, and in fact Jones-Drew looks the least explosive that they have at the moment. Now, pass rush and turnovers. Jacksonville entered week 7. They were tied with Minnesota for 28th in the NFL in sacks. They'd had just 10. Now, they're going to need, last season they finished the season dead last in the league. They only had 20 sacks. They're on pace to surpass last season's total, but the pass rush is far from being fixed, and they must get better at rushing at pressuring the quarterback. The pass rush is very poor at the moment. Apart from part of what they want to be, they want to be. General Manager Dave Caldwell wants to put a stamper on the offense and acquire some pass rushers. But until he does, the Jaguars will likely to continue to struggle rushing the passer. The Jaguars went into the week 7 with a total of 7 turnovers fourth. That left them 12 in the AFC in that regard, and they just didn't generate any turnovers against San Diego. So they are nil, still really down the bottom of the barrel. At times, the defense has played respectably, but one forced turnover per game isn't going to result in that many victories. In fact, the Chargers were able to march up the field and up and down the field almost at will, controlling the ball for 15 minutes longer than the Jags, and at one point were 7 of 8 converting on third downs. Now you see the way the 49ers want to play. They will use Kaepernick in a read option game, and they will run the ball via Frank Gore. And we've already seen that the Jacksonville Jaguars could have a lot of problems stopping that. I mentioned those are some of the keys to the game. The Jags aren't far away from having a respectable defence, but they won't get any near the top of the league ranks until they start generating a pass rush and more turnovers. Those are some of the keys and some of the things that Jacksonville must do well. Now, I mentioned at the top of the show our exclusive trading stat sheets, and these have a lot of information about how sides have responded in certain situations before and how often they go on to win the game from certain situations. These are giving you a guideline and a price to compare with what is on offer at that point from the bookmakers. Here, for this instance, you can see the true price is what they should be about the following situations at half time, and we also take a look at comparing games of a similar nature and how likely those situations are to happen throughout the game. In our live trading room on Sunday, we have the ability to predict a live tissue price and how likely statistically certain outcomes are to happen, such as what is likely to happen if sides lead by a certain score at half time, and what are their chances of leading by a certain margin in the second half. And as I've already mentioned, we've now developed a spreadsheet which can price the match throughout the game dynamically, depending on the current score and the time elapsed. Now, those are only exclusively available as part of our Insiders Club as we trade the games live on a Sunday night. Those statistics that I've just shown you there are a small taster of the profusion of data that we have available in those sheets, which are exclusive to NFL Insight and via the live updates which we're constantly firing to our trading room, making us able to assess match situations and the odds available at an instant and how much value is contained within those. Now, match previews are a small part of what we do at NFL Insight, and if you like this match preview, I hope you subscribe to the NFL Insight YouTube channel via YouTube for all the latest previews. So NFL Insight TV channel via YouTube, that's where we put all our latest previews. I'll be back over the weekends and with even more in the playoffs with further match previews on all the big games in the NFL. And if you like this preview, we also have a lot of written material as well. Make sure you can check out where we put our betting focused previews via our website, which is www.betting-insight.com, and where we take a look at all the best betting opportunities on the game once we've taken into a lot of the tactical factors which you've heard me speak about in this preview. If you like what we're doing, come and get involved with us at NFL Insight for all your NFL previews, statistics, trading views and betting advice. NFL Insight is at the forefront of a new way of looking at and betting on the NFL.